The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the dense forest of Zetheris. The air was thick with humidity, and every step through the underbrush seemed to release a new wave of unfamiliar scents, some sweet, others sharp and metallic. Jack Harper wiped sweat from his brow as he adjusted the strap of his equipment bag. Beside him, Emily Dawson crouched down to examine a peculiar plant with leaves that shimmered faintly in the dim light. "Have you ever seen anything like this?" Emily asked, her voice tinged with excitement. She brushed her fingers lightly over the plant's surface, causing it to emit a soft glow. "Not even close," Jack replied, shaking his head. His tone was calm but cautious. "We should probably be careful. We don't know what kind of toxins these things might have." Emily chuckled softly, though she didn't argue. She had always been drawn to the unknown, fascinated by the mysteries of alien ecosystems. It was one of the reasons she had joined the expedition team sent to explore Zetheris, a planet humanity had recently claimed as its first interstellar colony. For Jack, however, the mission was more practical. As an engineer, his focus was on ensuring the colony's infrastructure could withstand the planet's unpredictable environment. He wasn't here for discovery. He was here to build. They were deep into uncharted territory now, far beyond the safety of the settlement's perimeter. The colony itself was still young, barely 2 years old, and resources were spread thin. Exploration teams like theirs were tasked with mapping the area and identifying potential threats or opportunities. So far, they'd encountered nothing more dangerous than aggressive vegetation and strange weather patterns. But today felt different. There was an unease in the air, a tension neither of them could quite explain. As they moved further into the forest, the trees grew taller, their twisted branches forming a canopy that blocked out most of the sunlight. Shadows danced eerily on. The ground and the sounds of chirping insects gave way to an unsettling silence. Then suddenly Emily stopped dead in her tracks. "Jack," she whispered, pointing ahead. Through the foliage, they could see something unnatural, an angular structure jutting out from the earth covered in moss and vines. It looked ancient, weathered by time, but unmistakably artificial. "What is that?" Jack murmured, stepping forward, cautiously. He pulled out a handheld scanner and began sweeping it over the object. The device beeped rapidly, indicating high levels of energy emanating from within. "It's some kind of ruin," Emily said, her eyes wide with wonder. "Maybe remnants of another species that lived here before us." Before Jack could respond, a rustling sound came from behind them. Both turned sharply, hearts pounding. At first they saw nothing, but then movement caught their attention. A pair of glowing green eyes emerged from the darkness, followed by the silhouette of a creature unlike anything they'd ever seen. It stood nearly 8 feet tall, its body segmented like an insect's, with chitinous armor glinting dully in the fading light. Its limbs ended in razor-sharp claws, and its mandibles clicked ominously as it tilted its head, studying them with cold curiosity. More shapes appeared around it, stepping silently into view until the humans found themselves surrounded. "Stay calm," Jack said quietly, raising his hand slowly to show they weren't armed. "Let's not make any sudden moves." Emily nodded, though her breathing quickened. She glanced at Jack, searching for reassurance, but his expression was grim. He knew as well as she did that they were completely exposed. Their only weapons were small stun batons meant for fending off wildlife, not exactly effective against something this size. For a moment, the creatures simply observed them, their glowing eyes flickering with what might have been intelligence. Then one of them stepped closer, extending a clawed limb toward Emily. She flinched but held her ground, letting the creature touch the edge of her suit. Its movements were deliberate, almost curious. "They're trying to communicate," Emily whispered, her voice trembling but hopeful. "Maybe we can—" Her words were cut short as the creature suddenly reared back, emitting a loud, piercing screech. All at once, the forest erupted into chaos. The other creatures lunged forward, their claws slicing through the air. Jack grabbed Emily's arm and yanked her backward just in time to avoid being impaled. "Run!" he shouted, pulling her toward the direction they'd come from. They sprinted through the dense foliage, dodging low-hanging branches and leaping over roots. Behind them, the creatures pursued relentlessly, their screeches echoing through the trees. Jack risked a glance over his shoulder and saw that they were gaining ground. One of the creatures swiped at him, narrowly missing his leg. He stumbled but managed to regain his footing, adrenaline coursing through his veins. Emily tripped beside him, falling hard onto the damp soil. Without hesitation, Jack turned back, grabbing her hand and hauling her upright. "We're not going to make it," Emily gasped, her chest heaving. Her face was pale, streaked with dirt and fear. "Yes, we are," Jack snapped, his voice firm despite the panic rising in his throat. "Just keep moving." Somehow they managed to reach the edge of the forest where the open plains surrounding the colony stretched out before them. The creatures hesitated at the tree line, watching them with those eerie green eyes, but not venturing beyond. Jack and Emily collapsed onto the grass, panting heavily, their bodies trembling with exhaustion. When they finally caught their breath, Emily looked back at the forest, her expression conflicted. "Do you think they'll follow us?" she asked. "I don't know," Jack admitted, "but we need to warn the others. Whatever those things are, they're intelligent and they're dangerous." As they made their way back to the colony, neither spoke much. The encounter had left them shaken, each lost in their own thoughts. For Jack, it was a stark reminder of how fragile their foothold on this planet truly was. For Emily, it sparked a mix of fear and fascination. These creatures were unlike anything humanity had encountered before, and while they posed a clear threat, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to them than aggression. By the time they reached the settlement, night had fallen. The gates opened cautiously as guards spotted them approaching. Daniel Carter, the colony's leader, hurried over, concern etched on his face. "What happened out there?" he demanded, taking in their disheveled appearance. Jack recounted the events, as succinctly as possible, emphasizing the danger posed by the creatures. Emily added details about the ruins they'd discovered, suggesting that the beings might be connected to whatever civilization had built them. Daniel listened intently, his jaw tightening. "This changes everything," he said finally. "We need to prepare for the possibility of conflict. If these creatures see us as a threat, we can't afford to be caught off guard." Emily frowned. "Or maybe we misunderstood them," she countered. "Their behavior could have been defensive. We were trespassing on their territory." "That doesn't excuse attacking us," Rachel Monroe interjected, stepping forward. She was a former soldier who had taken charge of the colony's security. Her stance was rigid, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. If they wanted to communicate, they had plenty of chances. Instead, they chose violence, and maybe we provoked them without realizing it, Emily shot back, her voice rising slightly. "We don't know enough about them to assume the worst." Daniel raised a hand to quiet them. "Both of you raise valid points," he said diplomatically. "But right now our priority is protecting the colony. Rachel, I want increased patrols and fortifications along the perimeter. Emily, if you believe there's merit in understanding these creatures, document everything you observed and share it with the council. We'll decide how to proceed after we've gathered more information." The meeting dispersed, leaving Jack and Emily standing together under the dim glow of the settlement's lights. Jack sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You really think we can find a way to coexist with them?" "I have to believe it's possible," Emily replied, her gaze distant. "Otherwise, what does that say about us?" Jack didn't answer. He wasn't sure he believed in peaceful solutions anymore, not after what they'd just experienced. But for Emily's sake, he hoped she was right. Because if she wasn't, the future looked bleak indeed. The next morning, the colony buzzed with nervous energy. News of the encounter with the insectoid creatures had spread quickly, and fear gripped the settlers like a vice. People whispered in hushed tones as they went about their daily tasks, glancing warily at the forest that bordered their settlement. The sense of safety they had once taken for granted was shattered, replaced by an unshakable awareness of the unknown lurking just beyond their walls. Daniel Carter called an emergency meeting in the main hall, where colonists gathered to hear What leadership planned to do? The room was crowded, filled with anxious faces. Some clutched weapons, others held children close. Rachel Monroe stood near the front, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd. Emily Dawson sat quietly off to the side, her notebook open on her lap, scribbling notes furiously. Jack Harper leaned against a wall, his expression unreadable, but his body tense. "Ladies and gentlemen," Daniel began, his voice calm but firm, "we all know what happened yesterday. Two of our own, Jack and Emily, encountered a group of alien creatures deep in the forest. These beings are intelligent, possibly territorial, and clearly capable of defending themselves. For now, we don't know their motives, but we must prepare for the worst." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone shouted, "What if they attack? Us here? Are we ready?" Rachel stepped forward before Daniel could respond. "That's exactly why we need to act now," she said, her tone commanding. "These creatures attacked without provocation. If we wait around hoping they'll leave us alone, we're signing our own death warrants. We need to strike first, hit them hard before they have a chance to hit us." Her words ignited a flurry of reactions. Some nodded vigorously in agreement, while others looked uneasy. One woman stood up, clutching her young son's hand. "You want to start a war?" she asked, her voice trembling. "We came here to build a new life, not to fight monsters." "It's not about starting a war," Rachel shot back, her voice rising. "It's about survival. If we let them think we're weak, they'll see us as prey. Trust me, I've seen this kind of thing before. You show strength or you die." Emily couldn't stay silent any longer. She stood up, her face flushed but determined. "We don't know enough about them to justify attacking," she argued. "Yes, they were aggressive, but maybe we misunderstood their intentions. What if they were protecting something? Their territory. They're young. We owe it to ourselves and to them to try understanding first." The room erupted into arguments, voices overlapping until Daniel raised his hands for silence. "Enough," he barked, his patience wearing thin. "Both sides make valid points, but we can't afford division right now. Here's what we'll do. Rachel, I'm authorizing increased patrols and defensive measures. No one ventures outside the perimeter without clearance. And Emily, continue documenting everything you observed. If there's a way to avoid conflict, we need to find it." The meeting ended with mixed feelings. As people filed out, some muttered under their breath about how foolish it was to trust aliens, while others praised Daniel for trying to keep the peace. Jack lingered behind, watching Emily pack up her things. He approached her cautiously. "You really think talking to those things is going to work?" he asked, his tone skeptical but not unkind. "I don't know," Emily admitted, closing her notebook. "But I do know that rushing into a fight isn't the answer. Look at Earth's history. How many times did humans destroy each other because of misunderstandings? We can't repeat those mistakes here." Jack sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I hope you're right. But if Rachel gets her way, we might not get the chance to find out." Over the next few days, tensions within the colony continued to rise. Rachel wasted no time implementing stricter security protocols. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter day and night, their weapons loaded and ready. Barricades were erected at key points, and drills became a regular part of life. The once optimistic atmosphere of the settlement had given way to paranoia. Meanwhile, Emily threw herself into her research. Using samples she'd collected during their ill-fated expedition, she analyzed the strange plant life and soil composition near the ruins. She also reviewed recordings from Jack's scanner, piecing together clues about the creature's behavior. Her findings suggested that the insectoids, whom she tentatively dubbed Zorathians, based on markings carved into the ruins, possessed advanced technology hidden beneath their hive-like structures. This revelation intrigued her even more, though she struggled to convince others of its importance. One evening, as she worked late in the lab, Jack stopped by to check on her. "Still at it, huh?" he asked, leaning against the doorway. "Yeah," Emily replied, barely looking up from her microscope. "There's so much we don't understand about them. Every piece of data brings us closer to figuring out who or what they really are." Jack hesitated before speaking again. You know Rachel's pushing harder than ever for action, right? She's got half the council convinced we need to send a team into the forest to neutralize the threat. Emily froze, her hands hovering over her equipment. Neutralize? You mean kill them? Pretty much, Jack confirmed grimly. She thinks it's only a matter other. The council meeting that followed was tense. Rachel Monroe stood at the center of the room, her presence commanding as she laid out her plan. We can't keep waiting for them to make the next move, she said, pointing to a crude map of the forest, pinned to the wall. Their nests are deep in the woods, and if we hit one of their main hives, we'll cripple their ability to attack us. It's simple. Destroy their leadership and they'll fall apart. Her confidence was contagious, and several members of the council nodded in agreement. But Emily Dawson wasn't about to let the decision slide without a fight. She stepped forward, clutching a folder filled with her research. Rachel, you're talking about wiping out an entire species based on one encounter, Emily argued, her voice steady despite the knot of anxiety in her stomach. These creatures might have been reacting to our presence. We don't even know if they understand what we are or why we're here. If we rush into this, we could be making the same mistakes humans have made for centuries, judging others before understanding them. Rachel rolled her eyes, clearly unimpressed. Understanding won't save us if they decide to swarm the colony. Look, I get it. You're the scientist who wants to study them. But we're not dealing with lab rats here. These things are dangerous, and hesitation will only cost us lives. Daniel Carter, the colony leader, rubbed his temples, looking increasingly weary. Both of you raise valid points, he said, trying to mediate. But we need to act soon. The longer we wait, the more time. They have to regroup or worse, prepare another attack. Jack Harper, who had been quietly observing the debate, finally spoke up. What if we send a small team to scout first, he suggested. We gather intel, see how many of them there are, and figure out the best way to handle this. If it comes down to defending ourselves, fine. But let's not go in guns blazing until we know what we're up against. Rachel shot him a sharp look. That's just delaying the inevitable. Every second we waste gives them more time to strike back. Despite her protests, Daniel sided with Jack's proposal. We'll send a reconnaissance team, he announced firmly. If they confirm that the Zorathians pose an immediate threat, then we'll consider Rachel's plan. Until then, we hold off on any direct attacks. The decision left the room divided, but the council adjourned with reluctant acceptance. As people filed out, Rachel pulled Jack aside. You better hope your little scouting mission doesn't end in disaster, she warned, her tone icy. Because if it does, I'm not sticking around to clean up the mess. The reconnaissance team consisted of 5 members: Jack Harper, Emily Dawson, 2 seasoned guards named Marcus Reed and Linda Cole, and a young technician named Brian Holt, whose expertise in alien tech made him invaluable. They set out early the following morning, armed with stun rifles, scanners, and recording equipment. The atmosphere among them was heavy, each person lost in their own thoughts as they ventured deeper into the forest. Emily walked beside Jack, her expression troubled. Do you think we'll actually find anything useful? She asked softly. We'll find something, Jack replied, though his tone lacked conviction. Whether it helps us avoid conflict is another story. As they approached the area where the ruins had been discovered, the air grew colder, and the usual sounds of wildlife faded into an eerie silence. The trees loomed taller here, their gnarled branches twisting like skeletal fingers. The ruins themselves were partially obscured by thick vines, but the faint hum of energy emanating from within confirmed they were still active. Brian knelt down to examine the structure, running his scanner over its surface. This tech is ancient, he murmured, adjusting his glasses. But it's advanced, way beyond anything we've seen so far. Whoever built this knew what they were doing. Before anyone could respond, the ground beneath them trembled slightly. A low, guttural clicking sound echoed through the forest, growing louder with each passing second. Jack raised a hand, signaling the group to stop. Stay alert, he whispered, gripping his rifle tightly. From the shadows emerged a swarm of Zorathians, their glowing green eyes locking onto the intruders. Unlike the smaller group Jack and Emily had encountered before, These creatures moved with purpose, their claws glinting menacingly in the dim light. One of them, a larger specimen with intricate markings along its exoskeleton, stepped forward, emitting a series of sharp clicks and screeches. "They're communicating," Emily said urgently, pulling out her recorder. "Maybe we can—" Her words were cut short as the Zorathians lunged forward, their movements swift and coordinated. Marcus and Linda opened fire, their stun blasts momentarily, staggering the creatures, but it wasn't enough to stop them. The team scrambled backward, retreating toward the edge of the clearing. "We need to fall back," Jack shouted, firing his rifle while keeping an eye on Emily. "Now!" But as they turned to flee, a massive explosion rocked the area. The ruins behind them erupted in a shower of debris, sending everyone sprawling to the ground. When the dust settled, the Zorathians paused, their attention shifting to the source of the blast, a hidden compartment in the ruins that had been jarred open by the impact. Inside was a complex network of machinery, pulsating with blue light. Brian stared at it in awe, completely forgetting the danger around them. This is incredible," he stammered. "It's some kind of control system, maybe even a weapon." Jack grabbed him by the arm. "Snap out of it, we need to move." The distraction gave the team a brief window to escape, but the damage had already been done. As they fled deeper into the forest, the Zorathians began to retreat, their focus now on the exposed technology. Emily glanced back, her heart pounding. "What did we just uncover?" she whispered. Back at the colony, the team reported their findings to the council. Daniel listened intently as Brian explained the significance of the machinery they'd discovered. "If we can figure out how to use it, we might be able to disable their weapon systems," Brian concluded. "But getting close enough to do that would be suicide." Rachel leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with determination. "Then we make sure we're ready for suicide," she said bluntly. "I'll lead a strike team to take out the hive. With their defenses down, we can finish this once and for all." Emily slammed her hands on the table, her voice rising in frustration. "Are you listening to yourself? You want to destroy an entire species because of fear. What happens when the next alien race shows up and they hear about how we handled this? Do you think they'll trust us?" Rachel sneered. "I don't care about trust, I care about survival. And if you're too soft to do what needs to be done, then step aside." The argument escalated until Daniel intervened. "Enough," he barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Rachel, prepare your team, but only for reconnaissance. No direct engagement unless absolutely necessary. Emily, keep working on finding a way to communicate. We need options, not bloodshed." Though the decision temporarily quelled the tension, the divide between the two factions deepened. That night, Jack found Emily sitting alone in the lab, staring blankly at her notes. He sat down across from her, offering a weak smile. "Still holding out hope?" She sighed, leaning back in her chair. "I don't know anymore, Jack. Part of me wonders if Rachel's right, if maybe some species just aren't meant to coexist. But if we give up now, what does that say about us?" Jack didn't answer. Instead, he reached over and placed a reassuring hand on hers. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together." 2 days later, Rachel led her team into the forest under the cover of darkness. Jack, unable to sit idly by, volunteered to join them, much to Emily's dismay. "You're walking straight into a slaughter," she told him before they left. "Please, just stay safe." "I'll do my best," he promised, giving her a tight hug. "But someone has to make sure things don't spiral out of control." The mission proceeded as planned, at least initially. Under the cover of night, the team infiltrated the Zorathian territory, avoiding patrols and setting charges near the exposed machinery. But as they prepared to detonate the explosives, everything went wrong. A patrol stumbled upon them, and chaos erupted. Gunfire lit up the forest, as the humans fought desperately to hold their ground. Jack shielded Brian, who frantically worked to activate the EMP device they'd brought along. "Almost there," Brian yelled over the din. Rachel, meanwhile, led a counterattack, drawing the Zorathians away from the others. Her bravery bought them precious seconds, but it came at a cost. As the EMP discharged, disabling the alien machinery, Rachel was overwhelmed by a swarm of creatures. Her final scream echoed through the trees as the rest of the team retreated. When they returned to the colony, battered and grief-stricken, the mood was somber. The EMP had succeeded in neutralizing the Zorathian weapons, but the price had been devastating. For Emily, the loss felt unbearable, a grim reminder of humanity's capacity for destruction. And yet, amidst the sorrow, she couldn't shake the belief that there was still a chance to change the narrative. As dawn broke over Zetheris, Emily vowed to keep searching for answers, because if there was one thing she knew for certain, it was that survival wasn't enough. Not if it came at the expense of compassion. The days following the EMP strike were filled with a heavy silence. The colony had been granted a fragile reprieve, but the cost weighed heavily on everyone's shoulders. Rachel Monroe's sacrifice haunted the settlement, her name whispered, in quiet reverence. Her bravery had saved the team and, by extension, the colony, but it also marked a turning point. For many, her death symbolized the futility of aggression, while for others it reinforced the belief that strength was humanity's only path to survival. Jack Harper returned from the mission visibly changed. His usual calm demeanor was replaced by a restless tension, his hands trembling slightly whenever he wasn't occupied. He avoided talking about what happened in the forest, burying himself in repairs and maintenance work around the colony. Emily Dawson noticed his withdrawal but chose not to push him. Instead, she focused on her own mission, finding a way to communicate with the surviving Zorathians. The EMP had done its job, disabling the ancient machinery that powered their weapon systems. Without those tools, the Zorathians seemed less aggressive, retreating deeper into the forest. But Emily knew this lull wouldn't last forever. If humanity wanted a future on Zetheris, they needed to address the root of the conflict, not just suppress it temporarily. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily sat alone in the lab, poring over recordings of the Zorathians' clicks and screeches. She replayed the sounds over and over, searching for patterns or repetitions that might indicate language. Her notes were scattered across the desk, diagrams and translations scribbled hastily in the margins. Progress was slow, frustratingly so, but she refused to give up. Jack entered quietly, carrying 2 cups of steaming coffee. "You look like you could use a break," he said, setting 1 cup beside her. Emily glanced up, offering a weak smile. "Thanks, I didn't realize how late it was." "You've been at this for hours," Jack replied, sitting down across from her. "Any luck?" "Not much," she admitted, rubbing her tired eyes. "Their vocalizations are complex, layers upon layers of meaning. It's like trying to solve a puzzle without knowing where the pieces fit." "But you think it's possible?" Jack asked, leaning forward. "Communication, I mean." "I have to believe it is," Emily said firmly. "If we can show them we're not here to destroy them, maybe we can rebuild trust. Maybe there's still hope for coexistence." Jack hesitated, his expression conflicted. "Even after everything that's happened, they attacked us first, Emily. They killed people. How do we move past that?" "We start by understanding why they did it," she replied. "Fear, territory, survival, it's all connected. Humans aren't exactly strangers to making bad decisions, out of fear either. Look at Earth's history, wars, colonization, extinction events. We've caused our share of destruction. Does that mean we deserve to be wiped out?" Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Jack stared into his coffee cup, unable to meet her gaze. "I don't know if we deserve redemption," he muttered finally. "But I want to believe we can earn it." The next morning, Emily approached Daniel Carter with a proposal. "I need permission to go back into the forest," she said, her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest. "There might still be survivors among the Zorathians. If we can reach out to them, maybe we can prevent another attack." Aniel frowned, clearly uneasy. "After everything that's happened, sending someone out there alone is too risky. What makes you think they'll listen?" "I'm not planning to go unarmed," Emily assured him. "And I won't go alone. I'll take a small team, just enough to protect me if things go wrong. But staying here and waiting for them to recover isn't an option either. We need to act now before they regroup and decide to retaliate." Reluctantly, Daniel agreed. though he insisted on accompanying her himself. "If you're determined to do this, I'm coming with you," he said firmly. "As leader, it's my responsibility to ensure your safety and ours." Emily nodded, grateful for his support. Together, they assembled a team consisting of Jack, Marcus Reed, and Linda Cole. Each member brought something valuable to the mission. Jack's engineering skills, Marcus and Linda's combat expertise, and Daniel's leadership. Armed with stun rifles, recording equipment, and supplies, they set out at dawn, heading toward the heart of Zorathian territory. The journey was tense, every rustle of leaves or distant screech putting them on edge. The forest felt different. Now, quieter, emptier. Many of the glowing plants they'd seen before were dimmed, their light fading as if sapped by the EMP blast. The ruins they passed were eerily silent, their hum replaced by an unsettling stillness. As they ventured deeper, Emily began noticing subtle signs of life. Broken branches, claw marks on tree trunks, faint trails in the underbrush, all evidence that the Zorathians were still out there, watching. She signaled the group to stop, pulling out her recorder. "They're close," she whispered. "We need to let them know we're not here to fight." "How do you plan to do that?" Marcus asked, gripping his rifle tightly. "By showing them we're willing to listen," Emily replied. She stepped forward cautiously, holding up her hands to signal peace. Then, using her recorder, she played back one of the Zorathian vocalizations, a pattern she believed might signify curiosity or inquiry. For a long moment, nothing happened. The forest remained eerily quiet, the weight of anticipation pressing down on them. Just as doubt began creeping in, a low clicking sound echoed through the trees. From the shadows emerged a lone Zorathian, smaller than the ones they'd encountered before. Its movements were slow, cautious, almost hesitant. Emily held her ground, lowering the recorder slightly. "It's okay," she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. "We're not here to hurt you." The creature tilted its head, its glowing green eyes studying her intently. It emitted another series of clicks, softer this time, almost melodic. Emily responded by playing the same recording again, mimicking its rhythm. To her astonishment, the Zorathian stepped closer, extending one of its clawed limbs toward her. "Don't move," Daniel warned sharply, raising his weapon. "No, wait," Emily hissed, keeping her hand steady. "It's testing us, let it." The moment stretched endlessly, each second fraught with uncertainty. Finally, the Zorathian withdrew its limb and turned, motioning for them to follow. Emily exchanged a glance with Daniel, who reluctantly nodded. "Stay alert," he whispered. "We don't know where it's taking us." The Zorathian led them to a hidden clearing deep within the forest. In the center stood the remnants of a massive hive, its structure partially collapsed but still intact in places. Inside, they found the last surviving queen, a towering figure with intricate markings along her exoskeleton. She was gravely injured, her body weakened by the EMP blast, but her eyes burned with intelligence and resolve. Emily approached carefully, kneeling down to appear less threatening. Using her recorder, she played a series of gentle clicks, hoping to convey peace. The queen responded with a low, resonant hum, her mandibles clicking softly. Though no words were exchanged, the message was clear. These creatures had suffered greatly, and their aggression stemmed from centuries of fear and loss. Through painstaking effort, Emily managed to establish rudimentary communication. The queen revealed fragments of her people's history, how they had once thrived as a technologically advanced civilization, only to collapse after a devastating war with another species. Convinced that outsiders always brought ruin, they had become fiercely territorial, lashing out preemptively to protect what little remained of their world. As the exchange continued, Emily realized the enormity of the task ahead. Bridging the gap between humans and Zorathians would require patience, empathy, and mutual sacrifice. But for the first time since arriving on Zetheris, she felt a glimmer of hope, not just for coexistence, but for healing. When the team returned, To the colony, they brought with them not only knowledge but also a fragile promise. The Zorathians were willing to share their secrets if humanity proved itself trustworthy. It was a daunting challenge, but one Emily was determined to meet. Because if there was one thing she'd learned during her time on Zetheris, it was that survival meant more than enduring. It meant learning to live together. The colony greeted the team's return with a mixture of relief and apprehension. Word of their encounter with the Zorathian queen spread quickly, sparking heated debates among the settlers. Some saw it as an opportunity for peace, while others viewed it as a dangerous gamble. The divide between those who believed in coexistence and those who favored caution or outright hostility grew wider than ever. Daniel Carter called another council meeting to address the situation. The room was packed, voices overlapping as people argued over what should come next. Rachel Monroe's absence loomed large, her death still fresh in everyone's minds. Her supporters, led by Linda Cole, insisted that humanity couldn't afford to trust the Zorathians after everything they'd done. They attacked us first, Linda said, her voice sharp with frustration. Why should we risk our lives for them? Emily Dawson stood at the center of the room, clutching her notes tightly. Because we owe it to ourselves to try, she replied, her tone calm but firm. This isn't just about survival. It's about proving that we can do better. If we turn away now, we're no better than the species that destroyed them before. Jack Harper sat quietly in the corner, watching the exchange unfold. He admired Emily's determination, but he couldn't shake the nagging doubt in his mind. Could humanity really change its ways? Or were they destined to repeat the same mistakes? Daniel raised his hands to quiet the crowd. Enough, he said, his voice cutting through the noise. We've all lost too much to let this fall apart. Here's what we'll do, Emily. You'll lead efforts to communicate with the Zorathians. But until we know more, we maintain strict security measures. No one goes outside the perimeter without clearance. The decision left both sides dissatisfied, but it was enough to keep the colony functioning, for now. As the meeting ended, Emily approached Daniel privately. Thank you for supporting me, she said softly, but I need your help. This won't work unless everyone is willing to put aside their fear. Daniel sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. I'll do what I can, Emily, but people are scared and fear makes them act irrationally. Just be careful, okay? We can't afford to lose anyone else. Over the next few weeks, Emily threw herself into building a bridge between humans and Zorathians. She spent hours recording and analyzing their vocalizations, piecing together fragments of meaning. The Queen, though weakened, proved to be a patient teacher, responding to Emily's efforts with growing curiosity. Slowly, a rudimentary form of communication began to take shape. Meanwhile, Jack worked alongside Marcus Reed to fortify the colony's defenses. Though he supported Emily's mission, he couldn't ignore the lingering threat posed by the Zorathians. Hope is great, he told her one evening as they shared a quiet meal, but hope doesn't stop claws from tearing through steel. I know, Emily admitted, her gaze distant, but neither does fear. If we let that guide us, we'll never move forward. Jack didn't argue. Instead, he reached across the table, placing a reassuring hand on hers. Just promise me you'll stay safe. That's all I ask. As days turned into weeks, small signs of progress began to emerge. A group of settlers accompanied Emily to the edge of the forest, where they exchanged gifts with the Zorathians, tools, food, and recordings of human speech. In return, the Zorathians offered samples of their technology, intricate devices that hinted at their once great civilization. Brian Holt, the young technician, marveled at the craftsmanship. This could revolutionize energy production, he said, holding up a glowing shard, if we can figure out how it works. Despite these breakthroughs, tensions within the colony remained high. Many settlers distrusted the Zorathians, convinced that their cooperation was a trap. Rumors spread of secret meetings and hidden agendas, fueling paranoia. Even Daniel found himself struggling to maintain order, his authority tested by those who demanded immediate action. One night, a group of dissenters led by Linda Cole confronted Emily outside her lab. "You're putting us all in danger," Linda accused, her eyes blazing with anger. "Every time you go out there, you're risking our lives. When are you going to realize that trusting them is a mistake?" Emily met her gaze steadily. "And when are you going to realize that not trying is the biggest mistake of all?" she countered. "We came here to start over, to build something new, but if we let fear dictate our choices, we'll destroy everything we've worked for." Linda clenched her fists, clearly torn between frustration and uncertainty. "Fine," she said finally. "But if anything happens to this colony, it's on you." The turning point came unexpectedly. One morning, as Emily prepared to visit the Zorathian hive, a scout team reported seeing movement near the settlement's perimeter. At first it seemed like another patrol, but then the creatures emerged, not armed for battle but carrying offerings. Shards of glowing crystal, bundles of strange plants, even damaged pieces of their own machinery. "They're trying to communicate," Emily realized, her heart racing. "They're showing us they mean no harm." Word spread quickly, drawing a crowd to the gates. For the first time, many settlers saw the Zorathians not as monsters but as beings capable of reason and empathy. Children peeked curiously from behind their parents' legs while adults exchanged wary but hopeful glances. Daniel stepped forward cautiously, raising a hand in greeting. One of the Zorathians mirrored the gesture, its mandibles clicking softly. The moment felt surreal. A fragile thread of connection stretched taut between two vastly different species. But not everyone was ready to embrace this newfound understanding. Later that evening, a fire broke out in one of the storage units along the colony's edge. Flames licked hungrily at the walls, sending clouds of smoke billowing into the night sky. Panic erupted as settlers scrambled to contain the blaze, only to discover sabotage. Wires had been deliberately cut, and accelerants scattered throughout the area. "It was them," Linda declared angrily, pointing toward the forest. "They're testing us, seeing how far they can push before we strike back." Emily shook her head vehemently. "No, this wasn't the Zorathians. They have no reason to attack us now. Whoever did this wanted to create division." Her words fell on deaf ears. Fear took hold, spreading faster than the flames themselves. By morning, calls for retaliation echoed through the colony. Daniel tried to calm the unrest, but even he struggled to quell the rising tide of anger. In the aftermath of the fire, Emily and Jack met in private, their expressions grim. "We're running out of time," Emily said, her voice heavy with worry. "If we don't find whoever's behind this, everything we've built will collapse." Jack nodded, his jaw tight. "Then we'll find them. Together." Their investigation led them to an unlikely source: Brian Holt. The young technician had always been quiet, keeping to himself, but recent events had pushed him to act. Fearing that humanity would squander the Zorathians' knowledge, he had sabotaged the storage unit in hopes of forcing the colony to prioritize defense over diplomacy. When confronted, Brian broke down, tears streaming down his face. "I didn't want anyone to get hurt," he confessed. I thought I was helping." Daniel addressed the colony the following day, revealing the truth behind the fire. "This wasn't an attack from the Zorathians," he announced firmly. "It was one of our own, acting out of fear. Fear that has nearly cost us everything." His words struck a chord, reminding the settlers of why they had come to Zetheris in the first place. Slowly, the tide began to turn. People started volunteering to assist Emily, eager to prove that humanity could rise above its flaws. As weeks passed, the bond between humans and Zorathians grew stronger. Together, they worked to restore balance to Zetheris, combining their knowledge to heal the planet's scarred landscape. Emily often found herself marveling at the resilience of both species, their ability to overcome hatred and mistrust. One evening, as she stood beside Jack overlooking the forest, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known since arriving on Zetheris. "Do you think we'll make it?" she asked softly. Jack smiled, his eyes reflecting the fading light. "We already have." Months had passed since the fire, and the colony was beginning to change in ways no one could have predicted. The alliance with the Zorathians, once fragile and uncertain, had grown into something stronger, a testament to the power of trust and cooperation. Though scars remained from the conflicts that had nearly torn both species apart, the settlers and the insectoid creatures worked side by side, their shared goal of survival uniting them. Emily Dawson stood at the edge of the forest, watching as a group of humans and Zorathians collaborated on repairing an ancient irrigation system buried beneath the soil. The technology was alien, far beyond anything humanity had ever seen, but with the Queen's guidance and Brian Holt's technical expertise, they were slowly unraveling its secrets. Water flowed freely for the first time in centuries, reviving patches of land long thought dead. The sight filled Emily with a quiet pride, not just for what they had accomplished, but for what it represented. Proof that two vastly different species could coexist. Jack Harper joined her, his hands shoved into the pockets of his worn jacket. "It's strange, isn't it?" he said, nodding toward the scene before them. "A year ago, we couldn't even imagine talking to these creatures. Now look at us." Emily smiled faintly, her gaze lingering on the Zorathians. Their movements were deliberate, almost graceful as they worked alongside the humans. "Strange doesn't even begin to cover it," she replied. "But I think that's what makes it beautiful. We're learning from each other, becoming something new." Jack nodded, though his expression remained thoughtful. "Do you ever wonder if we're doing enough, if this is really going to last?" "All the time," Emily admitted. "But I think lasting peace isn't about perfection. It's about effort. As long as we keep trying, there's hope." The colony itself had transformed over the months. Once a place defined by fear and uncertainty, it now buzzed with activity and purpose. New buildings rose from the ground, constructed using materials harvested from the forest under the Zorathians' supervision. Crops grew in fields irrigated by the revived systems, providing food not just for the humans, but also for the Zorathians, who adapted some of their own agricultural techniques to suit the settlers' needs. Children played freely near the forest's edge, laughing as they mimicked the clicking sounds of the Zorathians. Some of the younger settlers had even begun teaching basic human phrases to the creatures, creating a rudimentary bridge between their languages. For every setback, there were moments like these, small victories that reminded everyone why they had chosen this path. Daniel Carter watched it all unfold with a mixture of relief and awe. As leader, he had faced countless challenges, many of which had tested his resolve. But seeing the colony thrive despite everything gave him a sense of fulfillment he hadn't expected. He often found himself sitting alone in the evenings, reflecting on how far they had come. One night, as he sat on the porch of his quarters, Emily approached him carrying 2 cups of tea. She handed one to him without a word, sitting down beside him. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the distant hum of insects and the soft rustle of leaves. "You did good, Daniel," Emily said finally, breaking the quiet. "I know, it wasn't easy, but you kept us together when it mattered most." Daniel chuckled softly, shaking his head. "I didn't do much. You're the one who made this happen. Without your persistence, none of this would have been possible." "It wasn't just me," Emily countered. "Everyone played a part. Even those who doubted us, they pushed us to be better. Sometimes growth comes from resistance." Daniel sipped his tea, his eyes distant. "Do you think we'll ever truly understand them? The Zorathians, I mean." "I don't know," Emily admitted. "Maybe understanding isn't the point. Maybe it's about accepting that we'll never fully know, and being okay with that. What matters is that we're willing to try." Despite the progress, not everyone was ready to embrace the new reality. Linda Cole still harbored deep reservations about the Zorathians, her distrust rooted in the losses she had suffered. Though she no longer openly opposed Emily's efforts, her presence cast a shadow over the colony's unity. She often spent her days patrolling the perimeter, her rifle slung over her shoulder, keeping watch for any sign of betrayal. One afternoon, as she walked along the fence line, she encountered Marcus Reed, another member of the original reconnaissance team. He leaned against the barrier, gazing out at the forest. "You're wasting your time out here," he said, his tone light but firm. "They're not coming back to fight. Are you sure about that? Linda asked, her voice sharp. Because I'm not willing to take that risk, Marcus sighed, turning to face her. I get it. Trusting them isn't easy. But holding on to anger won't bring anyone back. Rachel wouldn't want this, for any of us. His words struck a nerve, and Linda looked away, her jaw tightening. After a moment, she muttered, Maybe you're right, but it's hard to let go. It is, Marcus agreed. But maybe that's the next step, for all of us. As the seasons shifted, the bond between humans and Zorathians deepened further. The Queen, though still recovering from her injuries, became a symbol of resilience for both species. Her willingness to share her people's knowledge inspired others to follow suit, leading to breakthroughs that benefited everyone. One day, Emily led a small team into the heart of the forest, where the ruins of the Zorathians' ancient civilization lay hidden. Guided by the Queen, they discovered archives filled with recordings, artifacts, and maps detailing the planet's history. Among them was evidence of the catastrophic war that had nearly wiped out the Zorathians, a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked aggression. This is incredible, Brian whispered, his hands trembling as he examined a glowing crystal, etched with intricate symbols. Their technology is years ahead of ours. With this we could solve so many problems, not just here, but back on Earth too. Emily nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. But it's not just about the tech, it's about learning from their mistakes and ours. If we can avoid repeating history, then maybe we've earned the right to call this place home. The final piece of the puzzle came unexpectedly. While exploring the ruins, Emily stumbled upon a chamber containing a massive holographic projection. Activating it revealed images of stars, planets, and civilizations, some thriving, others reduced to ash. At the center of the display was a message, written in both Zorathian script and universal symbols. Survival requires more than strength. It demands wisdom. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she realized the significance of the message. It wasn't just meant for humanity. It was a lesson the Zorathians themselves had learned through tragedy. Turning to the others, she said simply, This is why we're here, to prove that we can be better. When they returned to the colony, Emily shared the discovery with the council and the settlers. The room fell silent as she explained the meaning behind the message. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Daniel stood, his voice steady but filled with emotion. We came to Zytheris searching for a fresh start, he said. What we found was something greater, a chance to rewrite our story. Not just for ourselves, but for every species we encounter. Let's honor that. The crowd erupted into applause, a wave of hope washing over the colony. Even Linda managed a small smile, her doubts momentarily overshadowed by the collective spirit of renewal. In the weeks that followed, the settlers and Zorathians continued, working together, planting seeds, both literal and metaphorical, that would shape the future of Zytheris. Emily often found herself reflecting on how far they had come, from the chaos of their initial encounters to the fragile harmony they now shared. It wasn't perfect, and it likely never would be. But it was enough. One evening, as she stood atop a hill overlooking the settlement, Jack joined her, his presence comforting. You did it, Em, he said quietly. You changed everything. She shook her head, smiling softly. We did it. All of us. Together, they watched as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Below them, the colony thrived, a living testament to the power of hope, understanding, and the courage to reach across divides. For the first time in a long time, Emily felt certain of one thing. Humanity's future wasn't defined by its past. It was shaped by the choices they made today and the ones they would continue to make tomorrow.